The Grand Consortium Gala was, in a word, excessive. In 2 words, it was aggressively excessive. The kind of excessive that made you wonder if someone had lost a bet with physics and decided to take it out on good taste. Station Meridian 7 floated in neutral space, a monument to diplomatic cooperation that looked like a chandelier had reproduced with a warship. Every surface gleamed, every corner held some dignitary from some corner of the galaxy, all of them dressed in what their species considered formal wear. For the Kelthari, this meant enough jewelry to fund a small colony. For the Drexians, it meant ceremonial armor that could stop a plasma round, but apparently not fashion sense. Captain Rhea Castellan stood near the entrance, adjusting her dress uniform and trying not to laugh at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. The uniform was crisp, black with silver piping, and showed off exactly what she had known it would show off: scars. Lots of them. A jagged line ran down her left forearm. Another traced her collarbone, disappearing under the high collar. Smaller marks dotted her hands, her neck, the left side of her face. She had not tried to hide them. What would be the point? They were part of the package, part of the story, part of being human. The other species noticed immediately. Whispers started the moment she walked in. Not the good kind of whispers either. The Valthine delegation, tall and crystalline and annoyingly judgmental, leaned toward each other with expressions that managed to look condescending, even without proper faces. The court, squat and armored and generally unpleasant, made clicking sounds that their translators unhelpfully rendered as laughter. "Is that the human?" one of them said, not quietly enough. "Looks damaged," another replied. "Clumsy species, probably. Barely survived their own industrial age." Redana smiled. Let them talk. She had survived worse than gossip. Literally. Ambassador Zoran appeared at her elbow, looking nervous. Zoran was Talvarian, which meant he looked like someone had taken a ferret, made it bipedal, given it anxiety, and then put it in charge of interstellar relations. He was good at his job, mostly because he worried about everything, which meant he prepared for everything. "Captain," he said quietly, his translator rendering his chittering into smooth consortium standard, "perhaps we should stay near the edges tonight. The Kelthari delegation has been vocal about their opinions on humanity's recent admission to the consortium."
"Vocal how?"
Rhea asked, accepting a drink from a passing server. It was blue. It smelled like antifreeze. She sipped it anyway. Tasted like antifreeze too. Fantastic. "They believe we were admitted prematurely, that we lack the maturity, the durability, the cultural sophistication for galactic politics." Zoran's whiskers twitched. Crown Prince Veyron has been particularly pointed in his commentary. Pointed. Right. Rhea scanned the crowd and found him easily. Hard to miss, really. The Kelthari were tall, elegant, and absolutely convinced of their own superiority. Veyron stood at the center of a cluster of admirers, his scales shimmering gold and silver, his ceremonial robes flowing like liquid metal. He was holding court, literally, and from the way his entourage laughed at his every word, he was enjoying himself immensely. Lieutenant Cass stood at his right shoulder, sleek and dangerous looking. Major Valco at his left, broader and meaner. Both were nodding along to whatever wisdom the Crown Prince was dispensing. Probably something about how the Kelthari had ruled the Outer Rim for 3,000 years, and humans should be grateful to serve as footnotes in their glorious history. "Let me guess," Rhea said. "He thinks humans are soft." "Among other things, yes." "Adorable." She took another sip of her terrible blue drink. "Well, Ambassador, I did not come here to hide in the corners. We are full members now, whether they like it or not. Might as well act like it." Zoran made a sound like a tea kettle having an existential crisis, but he followed her anyway. The crowd parted as they moved through. Some species nodded politely. Others simply stared. The Drexian Captain Sable actually smiled, which for a species with mandibles was more threatening than friendly, but Rhea appreciated the effort. They were halfway to the refreshment station when Veyron's voice cut through the ambient noise like a knife through butter, a very loud, very obnoxious knife. "Ah, the human delegation has arrived. How wonderful! I was just discussing your species' fascinating trajectory, from cave dwellers to starfarers in what, 10,000 years? Remarkable, absolutely remarkable." He said it the way you might compliment a dog for learning to sit. Condescending did not begin to cover it. Rhea turned, keeping her expression pleasant. Years of dealing with military brass had taught her how to smile when she wanted to throw things. "Crown Prince Veyron, thank you for the warm welcome. Your station is beautiful, very shiny." A few nearby aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Veyron's smile tightened. Yes, well, we Kelthari have always appreciated beauty, aesthetics, grace, perfection. His eyes traveled over Rhea, lingering on the visible scars. We believe one's appearance reflects one's inner quality. A well-maintained exterior suggests a well-maintained mind and spirit. Interesting philosophy, Rhea said. Humans tend to think scars show experience. But hey, different strokes for different species, right? Veyron stepped closer, his entourage following like well-dressed shadows. Up close he was even more polished, not a scale out of place, not a blemish anywhere. He probably spent 3 hours every morning in front of a mirror, convincing himself he was a gift to the galaxy. Scars, he said, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. Every good politician knew how to work an audience. Yes, I noticed. Quite a collection you have there, Captain. Occupational hazard, I assume? Human ships must be terribly unsafe. Perhaps your species should invest in better safety protocols before venturing into deep space. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not universal, but enough to sting, enough to make Zoran's whiskers flatten against his face in distress. Rhea took another sip of her drink, still tasted like antifreeze, still did not care. Oh, some of them are from ships, she said casually. Some are from other things. You know how it is. I do not, actually. Veyron's smile was all teeth now. Kelthari are not so careless with our bodies. We do not collect damage like, what is the human saying, souvenirs. We take pride in maintaining ourselves properly. Must be nice, Rhea said. Living a life where nothing ever goes wrong. Sounds boring, but nice. The crowd was growing now. Word had spread that the Crown Prince was providing entertainment at the humans' expense, and nobody wanted to miss a good show. Even some of the more reserved species were drifting closer. Officer Zenith, the Valthene physiologist, watched with interest. Admiral Sci-Fi, who commanded the Consortium defense fleet, observed from a distance with unreadable eyes. Veyron was warming to his theme now, sensing blood in the water. Boring? My dear Captain, there is nothing boring about civilization, about culture, refinement, advancement. The Kelthari have perfected the art of living well. We have evolved beyond the need for such brutish encounters that leave one scarred and diminished. Major Valko snickered. Lieutenant Cass smiled, cold and sharp. Ambassador Zoran looked like he might actually faint. Captain, perhaps we should... It is fine, Ambassador. Rhea set down her empty glass. Actually, Your Highness, I would be happy to explain the scars, since you are so curious. That stopped him. For a moment, Veyron's perfect composure flickered. He had expected defensiveness, maybe anger, possibly a retreat, not cooperation. Yes, do enlighten us, he recovered smoothly. Please, share with the Consortium how humanity earns such distinguished markings. I am certain we are all fascinated. The crowd pressed closer. This was better than entertainment. This was a political execution dressed up as conversation, and everyone wanted a front-row seat. Ristos rolled up her left sleeve, exposing the burn scars that ran from wrist to elbow. They were old, faded to white against her skin, but still visible, still obvious. This one, she said, her tone conversational, like she was discussing the weather, is from a fusion reactor malfunction. Happened about 6 years ago on the merchant vessel Prospect. We were 3 weeks out from port when the magnetic containment started failing. Officer Zenith leaned forward, suddenly very interested. The Valthene were experts in energy systems. Failing how? Fluctuating, destabilizing. The whole thing was about 30 seconds from turning into a miniature sun and vaporizing the ship. Rhea traced the scar with one finger, remembering. The blast doors would not close. Mechanical failure, because of course they did. Someone had to hold them shut manually, while the engineering team executed an emergency shutdown. Hold them. Veyron's expression shifted, confusion replacing smugness. You mean physically hold pressure doors against a failing fusion reactor? Yep, for about 40 minutes, give or take. Lost track of time, honestly. The radiation alarm was pretty loud, made it hard to think. The crowd went very, very quiet. Officer Zenith's translator made a sound like choking. 40 minutes? The radiation exposure alone. Oh, it was bad, Rhea agreed cheerfully. About 800 millisieverts according to the medbay. They said I should be dead. I threw up for 3 days straight and my hair fell out, but hey, the ship did not explode, so I am calling it a win. 800. Zenith was accessing his data pad now, running calculations. That is, no Valthene could survive that, no Kelthari either. Even with immediate treatment, the cellular damage would be catastrophic. Yeah, humans are weird like that, Rhea said. We have got this thing called redundancy. Backup systems for our backup systems. Plus our cells are pretty good at repairing damage if you give them time. And a lot of anti-nausea medication. Seriously, so much medication. Veyron was staring at her now, the mockery gone from his eyes. You held a door shut, against a fusion reactor, for 40 minutes. Well, someone had to. Everyone else was busy not dying. She shrugged. It seemed important at the time. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the back someone dropped a glass. It shattered, loud in the quiet. Commander Strider, the human military attaché, chose that moment to chime in from where he stood near the refreshment table. That was a Tuesday, if I remember right. Rhea made it back in time for the weekly poker game. A few nervous laughs, mostly from humans. The aliens looked like they were trying to recalculate everything they thought they knew about Terran physiology. Rhea was not done. She touched the jagged line across her collarbone, the one that disappeared under her collar. This one is from decompression, the second decompression actually. The first one did not leave much of a mark. Second. Lieutenant Cass spoke for the first time, her voice sharp. You have been decompressed twice. Emergency EVA without proper gear. Hull breach. No time to suit up properly. Had to get outside to patch it before we lost atmosphere completely. Rhea's voice stayed light, casual, like she was describing a grocery run. You know that feeling when all the air gets sucked out of your lungs and your blood starts boiling because there is no pressure? That feeling? Multiple species made sounds of horror. The court, who were naturally armored against vacuum, looked impressed. Everyone else looked ill. The trick is not to hold your breath, Rhea continued. Human lungs can actually survive vacuum exposure for a minute, maybe two, if you let the air out. It is cold though, really, really cold, and everything hurts. But you can function long enough to slap a patch on a hull breach and get back inside. A minute? Admiral Sci-Fi stepped forward now, his mechanical voice translator giving his words a tinny quality. Our records indicate most species experience permanent brain damage after 15 seconds of vacuum exposure. Yeah, humans are built different. Something about our evolutionary history adapting to high altitudes and low oxygen environments. We are stubborn about staying alive. She grinned. The first decompression was worse, honestly. That one I was unconscious for. Woke up in med bay with burst blood vessels in my eyes and a headache that lasted a week. But still alive. So again, counting it as a win. Veyron looked like he was trying to find words and failing. His perfect polished composure was cracking. This is normal for humans. Surviving vacuum, surviving radiation. I mean, we try not to make it a habit, but yeah, it happens. Space is dangerous. You deal with it. Rhea glanced around at the assembled aliens. What, you all never had close calls? Close calls do not typically result in survival, Captain Sable said quietly. The Drexians' mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Not for us? Huh, weird. Rhea moved on, touching the claw marks on her shoulder. They were visible just above the collar line, 4 parallel scars that someone with a good imagination might recognize as talon marks. This one was from a camping trip. Camping? Major Valko spoke up confused. What is camping? Recreational wilderness survival. You go out into nature, live primitively for a while, enjoy the scenery, very relaxing. And you were attacked. Zenith was still frantically taking notes. Oh yeah, by a grizzly bear. That is an earth predator, about 3 meters tall when standing, weighs around 300 kilos, has claws like knives, and a bite force that can crush a bowling ball. Rhea smiled at the memory. Beautiful animals, really. Terrifying but beautiful. The crowd was dead silent now. Even the ambient music seemed to have stopped. It, took exception to me being near its territory. Came at me pretty aggressively. I did not have a weapon because, you know, camping, supposed to be peaceful and all that, so I just punched it in the nose until it decided I was not worth the effort and left. You punched it. Veyron's voice was flat, disbelieving. Well, yeah. What else was I going to do? Run. You cannot outrun a bear. They hit like 50 kilometers per hour. Easy. Fighting back was the only real option. Plus, their noses are sensitive. A few good hits and they usually back off. She paused. Usually. Sergeant Raven, another human from the delegation, laughed from across the room. Tell them about the second bear, Rhea. There was a second bear? Lieutenant Cass looked horrified. That one was smaller, only took one punch. Officer Zenith had stopped taking notes. He was just staring now, his crystalline face reflecting the station lights in a way that might have been pretty under other circumstances. You fight apex predators for recreation. I mean, we try not to fight them, we just want to enjoy nature. But sometimes nature has other plans, you know? Rhea shrugged. It is part of the experience. Humans have been dealing with predators for millions of years. We got pretty good at it. The political landscape of the room was shifting. Rhea could feel it. The laughter had stopped. The mockery had died. In its place was something else. Curiosity, maybe. Respect, possibly. Fear, definitely. Veyron tried to rally. He was a politician after all. Politicians did not go down easy. Surely that is your worst injury then. The predator attack. Oh no, Rhea said. The worst one is under my collar. She unbuttoned the top of her uniform, pulling the fabric aside just enough to reveal a scar that ran from her shoulder to her sternum. It was wide, irregular, the kind of scar that told a story of serious trauma. The crowd leaned in, morbidly fascinated. Transport crash, Rhea said simply. 6 years ago, shuttle malfunction during atmospheric entry, lost engines at about 40,000 feet. 40,000, Veyron started. Yep, the whole thing just came apart. Structural failure, heat damage, who knows? 1 second we were descending normally, the next second I was falling through the sky watching pieces of shuttle tumble past me. Every being in the room was frozen now, even the servers had stopped moving. No parachute, I assume, Admiral Sci-Fi said quietly. Parachute burned up with the rest of the gear, but I had pilot training, so I knew how to position myself, spread out, maximize drag, try to slow down as much as possible, rode a piece of debris for a while, used it like a surfboard almost, aimed for water. Water, Zoran's voice was faint. Yeah, ocean, hit at about terminal velocity, which for a human is around 200 kilometers per hour. Broke 3 ribs, punctured a lung, had a concussion that made me forget my own name for a day, but the water absorbed enough impact that I did not just splat. Someone in the crowd made a sound like a dying engine. Swam 5 miles to shore with a punctured lung. That part was probably the worst, honestly. Swimming is hard when you cannot breathe right. Took me about 4 hours. Then I walked to the nearest town to call for pickup. Walked. Veyron's voice was barely a whisper. Well, limped. The ribs made it hard to move fast. But yeah, found a settlement about 10 miles inland, used their comm system, got extracted the next day. Rhea buttoned her collar again. The shuttle was a total loss though, felt bad about the paperwork. The silence was absolute, profound. The kind of silence that happens when every being in a room is simultaneously reconsidering their understanding of reality. Then something moved in the shadows. The crowd parted like water, and from the darkest corner of the hall, something ancient stirred. Vral Empress Azara was old. Not old like a person gets old like mountains get old like stars get old. Her species had been apex predators when most of the consortium races were still trying to figure out fire. They had ruled, conquered, dominated, and finally settled into a kind of retirement as elder statesmen of the galaxy. Nobody had seen Azara move in decades. She attended councils, she listened, she occasionally offered wisdom, but she did not walk. She did not engage, she simply existed, a reminder of ancient power. She was walking now. 4 meters tall, hunched with age but still powerful. Her scales were black as void, her eyes burned like embers. She moved through the crowd and every being scrambled to get out of her way. Kelthari, Drexian, Valthine, Court, they all retreated before her like she was a force of nature. She approached Rhea directly, her massive head lowering to examine the human captain. Rhea, to her credit, did not flinch. She met those ancient eyes and waited. Azara reached out one massive claw, gently touching the scar on Rhea's arm, then the one on her collarbone, then she pulled the collar aside herself, examining the massive injury from the crash. When she spoke, her voice was like grinding stones, like the earth moving. Her translator rendered it into consortium standard, but the weight of it remained. You survived that. The question was not mocking, it was genuine, awed. Your species survives that. Rhea nodded slowly. We do our best. And then the Vrol Empress, oldest predator in the known galaxy, being who had never shown deference to any creature in 600 years, bowed. It was slight, just a lowering of the head, but it was unmistakable. Survivor recognizes survivor, Azara said quietly. I have lived 6 centuries, I have seen species rise and fall, I have witnessed the strong and the weak, the quick and the dead. In all that time, I have met perhaps a dozen beings who earned my respect through sheer will to live. She straightened, her eyes still on Rhea. You are one of them, your species, you are all like this. More or less, Rhea said. Some are tougher, some are luckier, but yeah, we are pretty hard to kill. Azara turned to the crowd, her voice carrying across the hall. The consortium has been blessed, and possibly cursed. We have admitted a species that refuses to die, that survives what should not be survived, that looks at death and simply declines. She looked back at Rhea, and something that might have been a smile crossed her ancient face. The galaxy will never be the same. Then she returned to her shadows, moving slowly, leaving a crowd of stunned diplomats in her wake. The gala exploded into noise. Every species started talking at once. Data pads appeared everywhere. Queries were sent to homeworlds, to medical databases, to historical archives. They wanted information. They wanted verification. They wanted to know if this was real, if humans really were this durable, this stubborn, this absolutely insane. Officer Zenith was practically vibrating with scientific excitement. The medical records. I need access to human medical records. This is unprecedented, the cellular regeneration alone. Captain Sable was talking to Admiral Sci-Fi, both of them looking at the human delegation with new eyes. Military applications, if they can survive what others cannot, if they can function in environments that would kill us. Commander Strider was fielding questions from a dozen species at once, his expression caught between amusement and exhaustion. Yes, it is normal. No, we are not augmented. Yes, really. No, I am not joking. Yes, I have my own stories. No, you probably do not want to hear them. Major Kale, the human science officer, was surrounded by aliens demanding explanations. It is evolution, okay? Our planet tried really hard to kill us for millions of years. We got good at not dying. We have redundant organs, aggressive healing factors, ridiculous pain tolerance, and a spiked-fueled determination that borders on stupid. It is just how we are built. Sergeant Onyx was laughing with a group of court warriors, comparing scars. Apparently, the court respected toughness. They were showing off their own battle damage, and Onyx was casually mentioning that time she fell into an active volcano and had to climb out. Volcano? One of the court asked. Yeah, you know, mountain that vomits molten rock. Lost my footing on the rim, fell about 60 meters into the caldera, landed on a ledge above the lava. Took me 3 hours to climb out. The heat was intense, melted my boots completely, but I made it. She shrugged. Ruined a perfectly good research trip, though. Captain Lyra was describing a poisoning incident to a fascinated group of Talvarian biochemists. Neurotoxin, yeah, should have killed me in about 90 seconds. I lasted 4 hours, gave the med team enough time to synthesize an antidote. They said my liver basically went into overdrive trying to process it. Human livers are kind of amazing, actually. We can regrow them. Cut one in half, it just grows back. Grows back? One of the Talvarians looked faint. Yep, only organ that does it, but yeah, pretty handy. The information was spreading like wildfire. With each story, with each casual mention of survival, the consortium's understanding of humanity shifted. They were not lucky primitives. They were not clumsy newcomers. They were survivors. Professional, experienced, terrifyingly competent survivors who had been forged in the fires of a death world and came out smiling. Veyron stood alone now, his entourage having abandoned him to pursue more interesting conversations. Lieutenant Cass was talking to Commander Strider. Major Valko was comparing notes with Sergeant Raven. The Crown Prince's political theater had backfired spectacularly. He approached Rhea one more time, his pride clearly wounded, but his survival instinct intact. Politicians knew when to retreat. Captain Castellan, he said, his voice missing all its earlier arrogance. I may have misjudged your species. A cultural misunderstanding, you comprehend. The Kelthari value different traits, but that does not diminish the clear resilience of humanity. It was the worst apology Rhea had ever heard, but it was an apology. No hard feelings, Your Highness, she said, meaning about half of it. We are all learning here. That is what the consortium is for, right? Understanding each other. Indeed, he nodded, still looking uncomfortable. Perhaps we should discuss trade agreements. Your species' survival gear, medical technology, it would be valuable to... Talk to Ambassador Zoran, Rhea interrupted gently. That is his department. I just break things and occasionally survive them. Veyron nodded again and retreated, his political instincts telling him to cut his losses. The gala continued, but the tone had completely changed. Humans were no longer the joke. The newcomers, the primitives who got lucky. They were the species that survived, the ones you wanted as allies, not enemies. The ones who looked at impossible odds and simply refused to acknowledge them. Trade negotiations that had been stalled for months suddenly gained momentum. Military pacts that seemed unlikely were back on the table. Research collaborations, cultural exchanges, technology sharing. It all opened up because the consortium had finally understood what humanity brought to the table. Not advanced technology, not ancient wisdom, not even particularly good manners. Just an absolute stubborn, bloody-minded refusal to die. Hours later, as the gala wound down, Rhea found herself sharing drinks with Empress Azara. The ancient Vrol had returned from her shadows, interested in conversation for the first time in decades. They sat in a quiet corner, away from the chaos, two survivors comparing notes. The worst injury I ever took, Azara said, her voice rumbling, was from a rival clan leader. 300 years ago. She nearly severed my spine. I was paralyzed for 2 years while it healed. 2 years, Rhea whistled. That is rough. My worst healing time was about 8 months. Shattered femur, took forever to knit back together. How did you shatter it? Fell off a cliff during a rescue operation. Caught a ledge halfway down, but the impact broke the bone. Still managed to haul the injured climber back up though. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. Azara made a sound that might have been laughter. Your species would have done well in the old times. When the galaxy was young and violent, you would have thrived. We kind of did thrive, just on our own planet. Earth tried really hard to kill us. Predators, diseases, climate shifts, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, meteor impacts. We survived all of it. Rhea sipped her drink. Still tasted like antifreeze, but she was developing a tolerance. Made us stubborn. Stubborn, Azara agreed. And terrifying. Do you know what the other species are saying now? They are calling you unkillable. They are afraid. Should they be? No. The Empress shook her massive head. Because you chose to be friendly. You could have come to the consortium as conquerors, with your durability, your adaptability, your refusal to accept death. You could have dominated. Instead, you came as diplomats, as traders, as friends. She looked at Rhea with those ancient eyes. That is perhaps the most frightening thing of all. A species that can survive anything, that chooses peace. It suggests wisdom beyond your years. Or we are just tired of fighting, Rhea said. We spent enough time fighting each other. Maybe we figured it was time to try something different. Perhaps. Azara was quiet for a moment. The Vrol spent millennia as conquerors. We took what we wanted, killed who opposed us. It brought us nothing but enemies and emptiness. When we finally chose peace, we found something better. I hope humanity finds the same. We are working on it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the other species mingle. The whole political landscape had shifted in a single night. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were insiders, respected, maybe feared, but definitely acknowledged. Sergeant Onyx approached, grinning. Captain, you have got to hear this. The court want to set up an exchange program. Send some of their warriors to Earth for survival training. They called it learning from the masters. Rhea laughed. Masters of what, exactly? Not dying, apparently. Onyx was still grinning. Also, the Valthene Science Council wants to study our medical records. They are offering a ridiculous amount of credits for access to human regeneration data. And the Drexians want to hire human security consultants. Turns out nobody wants to mess with guards who can survive a hull breach. Of course they do. Rhea shook her head. Anything else? Oh yeah. The Kelthari trade minister, not the crown prince, the actual minister, wants to negotiate contracts for human-designed safety equipment. Says if we can survive what we survive, our safety gear must be incredible. It is not, though. It is just normal gear. Yeah, but we survive with it, so they think it is magic. Onyx shrugged. I say we take the money and run. Captain Lyra joined them, looking amused. The best part is the military interest. Admiral Sci-Fi wants to discuss joint operations. He actually said, and I quote, If humans can survive decompression and radiation, they would be invaluable for high-risk missions. We went from joke to asset in about 4 hours. Fastest political turnaround I have ever seen, Rhea agreed. Commander Strider appeared looking exhausted but satisfied. I just got word from Command. They are very pleased. Apparently our status in the consortium just jumped about 15 levels. We have gone from probationary members to full voting members with committee assignments, all because everyone is now terrified we are unkillable. We are not unkillable, Rhea pointed out. We just take a lot of killing. Semantics, Strider waved it off. Point is, we are in, really in, the kind of in where people listen when we talk. Major Kale rushed over, data pad in hand. You all need to see this. The Consortium medical database just updated. They have created a new classification for species durability. Guess who is in the highest category? Let me guess, Rhea said dryly. Humans and Vrol. That is it. Every other species is at least 2 categories lower. They are calling it the survivor classification. Kale was almost laughing. We broke their entire rating system just by existing. The group dissolved into laughter. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. It was very, very human to accidentally terrify an entire galactic community just by being themselves. Ambassador Zoran appeared, looking more relaxed than Rhea had ever seen him. Captain Castellan, I wanted to thank you. Your presentation tonight has opened doors I thought would be closed for decades. We have trade agreements pending with 6 species, military cooperation offers from 4 more, and the Kelthari have formally apologized for their earlier remarks. Did Veyron apologize, or did someone make him apologize? Rhea asked. Does it matter? Zoran's whiskers twitched in amusement. The result is the same. Humanity is now a recognized power in the consortium, all because you shared your scars. Happy to help, Ambassador. As the night wore on, more stories emerged. Sergeant Raven talked about surviving a ship fire. Lieutenant Thorne described a zero-gravity combat injury. Officer Zenith listened to everything, taking notes, his scientific mind trying to comprehend the sheer impossibility of human durability. The phrase began spreading through the consortium networks. Within hours it was everywhere, on official channels, on back channels, on personal communications between species. Built different. Thank the stars they are friendly. It became shorthand for humanity, a warning, a compliment, a statement of fact. The humans were built different. They survived what should not be survived. They walked away from what should kill them. They looked at death and casually declined the invitation. And most importantly, they had chosen to be friends. Days later, Rhea stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking out at the stars. The gala was over. The political maneuvering was done. Humanity had its place in the consortium now, earned not through technology or culture, but through sheer stubborn survival. A message appeared on her datapad, from Command. Simple, direct. Well done, Captain. The consortium sees us now. Really sees us. You showed them who we are. Rhea smiled, touching the scar on her arm. The one from the reactor. The one that had started everything. She had not told them about the worse incidents. The time she survived re-entry in nothing but a pressure suit. The time she fought off a hostile boarding party with a broken arm and a concussion. The time she had been clinically dead for 3 minutes and came back anyway because she was too angry to stay dead. Some stories were better kept quiet. Some survival tales were too absurd even for a species built on absurdity. Better to be underestimated than feared too much. Better to let them think they knew humanity's limits. Besides, if they knew everything humans could survive, they might never sleep again. Rhea looked out at the galaxy, at the thousands of species and worlds and possibilities, and she smiled. The consortium thought they understood humanity now. They thought they had seen what humans could survive. They had no idea. 3 weeks after the gala, the consortium discovered just how wrong they were. It started with a distress call from the mining colony on Thuros 4. Standard emergency broadcast. The kind that got routed through consortium channels and distributed to any ships in range. Equipment failure, structural collapse, workers trapped underground. Bad situation, but not unusual. What made it unusual was the response time. The nearest consortium rescue vessel was 18 hours out. The Kelthari had a ship 12 hours away. The Drexian emergency response team could be there in 10 hours if they pushed their engines. The human cargo hauler Bellerophon was 3 hours out. Captain Rhea Castellan received the distress call while hauling medical supplies to a frontier station. Her ship was not a rescue vessel. It was barely even a decent cargo hauler, but it was close, and humans had this annoying habit of not ignoring people who needed help. "Commander Strider, plot a course for Thuros 4, she said, already pulling up the colony specs on her screen. "Best possible speed." "Captain, we are not equipped for rescue operations," Strider pointed out, though he was already adjusting their trajectory. "We have got cargo hooks and cutting torches, that is about it." "Then we will make do." Rhea studied the readouts. Thuros 4 was a lithium mining operation, mostly automated, about 60 workers on site. The collapse had trapped 43 of them in the lower shafts. Oxygen for maybe 6 hours, if they were lucky. No one was going to reach them in 6 hours. No one except the humans who were not supposed to be able to help. "Send a message to the colony," Rhea said. "Tell them we are inbound. Tell them to hold on." 3 hours later, the Bellerophon dropped out of FTL above Thuros 4 like a brick through a window. Subtle was not in the human vocabulary today. The colony administrator, a Talvarian named Kix, appeared on the comm screen looking desperate. "Human vessel, thank the stars. But I must inform you, our rescue equipment was destroyed in the collapse. Without proper gear, without support structures, there is no way to—" "Administrator, with respect, stop talking and send us the shaft schematics," Rhea interrupted. "How deep are they?" 800 meters, but the main shaft is completely blocked. Secondary access points are unstable. Any attempt to dig through could cause another collapse. Kix's whiskers were flat against his face, the Talvarian sign of distress. "The Drexian rescue team has the equipment needed, but they are still 7 hours out. The trapped workers have perhaps 4 hours of air remaining." "Understood. Transmit those schematics." Rhea cut the comm and turned to her crew. "All right, people, we have done stupider things, probably, recently even." Lieutenant Nova, the ship's engineer, pulled up the shaft layouts. She was young for a human, barely 30, but she had already survived 2 reactor breaches and a navigation computer explosion. "Captain, this is actually insane. The collapse is massive. We would need heavy equipment, support beams, excavation drones. What do we have?" "Cargo clamps, industrial cutting torches, some demolition charges we use for clearing debris fields, and our own 2 hands." "Perfect. That is more than enough." "Captain." "Nova, I once dug through 30 meters of rubble with a bent pipe and determination. We can do this." Rhea stood, heading for the airlock. "Strider, you have the bridge. Everyone else, suit up. We are going mining." The Bellerophon landed on Thuros 4 with all the grace of a dropped anvil. Rhea and her crew Nova, Sergeant Onyx and Corporal Zane hit the ground and assessed the situation. The main shaft entrance was a disaster. Tons of rock and metal all collapsed inward, completely impassable. The Talvarian workers stood around looking helpless, their emergency gear designed for maintenance, not excavation. "Okay," Rhea said, scanning the area. "Kex, where are the secondary access points?" "Here and here." The administrator indicated 2 smaller shaft openings about 50 meters away. "But as I said, they are unstable. Seismic readings show—" Yeah, might collapse. Got it." Rhea walked toward the nearest secondary shaft. "How wide are these?" 1.2 meters diameter. "But they are not rated for—" "Perfect. I can fit." Rhea started stripping off her outer gear, down to just her pressure suit. "Nova, you are with me. Onyx, Zane, get those cutting torches ready. We are going to widen this shaft as we go." Administrator Kix made a sound like a tea kettle. "You cannot be serious. You cannot simply climb down an unstable shaft with cutting equipment. The heat stress alone could trigger another collapse. The structural integrity is compromised." "Yeah, I heard you the first time." Rhea tested the shaft edge. "Solid enough, probably. Look, we have got 4 hours to reach them. The Drexian team has 7 hours to get here. Math says we are the only option." "This is suicide," Kex whispered. "Nah, suicide is certain death. This is just really dangerous. Totally different thing." Rhea lowered herself into the shaft. "Nova, start cutting. Let us make this hole bigger." What followed was the kind of operation that would give safety inspectors nightmares for generations. Rhea and Nova descended into the unstable shaft, using magnetic clamps to hold themselves in place while cutting away obstacles. The heat from the torches made the metal groan. The whole structure shuddered every time they cut through a support beam. Rocks fell constantly, bouncing off their helmets, their shoulders, their backs. "This is absolutely insane," Nova muttered, cutting through another blockage. "We are going to die down here." "Probably not," Rhea replied, kicking away debris. "I have survived worse. You have survived worse. We are humans. This is what we do." They dropped 20 meters, 40, 60. The shaft grew narrower, more cramped. They had to cut away sections just to fit. The structural warnings on their suit displays went from yellow to red to flashing crimson. "Captain, I am reading stress fractures all around us," Nova said. "One wrong move and—" The shaft shuddered, groaned. A crack appeared in the wall beside Rhea's head, spreading like lightning. "Down, go down now," Rhea shouted. They dropped, using their magnetic clamps like rappelling gear, falling in controlled bursts as the shaft began to collapse behind them. Rock and metal rained down. The space above them simply ceased to exist, filled with crushing debris. They hit the bottom of the secondary shaft, landing in a small access tunnel. Behind them, their escape route was completely gone, buried, impassable. "Well," Rhea said, breathing hard. "That was exciting." "Exciting?" Nova's voice was shrill. "Captain, we just got buried alive. Our exit is gone. We are trapped down here." "Not trapped, just temporarily without an obvious exit." Rhea checked her scanner. The trapped miners were close now, maybe 100 meters through the tunnels. "Come on, let us go get these people." They crawled through the access tunnels, following the scanner readings. The spaces were tight, barely wide enough for a human. The Talvarian miners would not have fit at all, which explained why the secondary shafts had been written off as rescue routes. But humans were flexible. Humans could squeeze through spaces that should not accommodate them. Humans could dislocate their own shoulders if needed and pop them back in later. They found the trapped miners huddled in a chamber, their oxygen running low, their hope running lower. "Who are you?" one of them asked, staring at the two human figures crawling through an impossible tunnel. "Rescue team," Rhea said simply. "How many injured?" 12, 3 critical, but there is no way out. The main shaft is blocked, the secondary shafts are... "Yeah, we came through a secondary shaft. It collapsed behind us, so we are all stuck now." "Fun times." Rhea assessed the injured. Broken bones, crushing injuries, one Talvarian with severe internal damage. "Okay, here is the plan. We stabilize the critical cases, then we dig out, together." "Dig out? With what?" The miner looked around. "We have no equipment, no tools, nothing." Nova held up her cutting torch. "We have this, and we have something you all don't have." "What is that?" "Experience being trapped underground with no way out." Nova grinned, though it was hidden behind her helmet. "This is honestly a pretty standard Tuesday for humans." They got to work. Rhea treated the injured using the limited medical supplies she had brought. Broken bones got splintered, wounds got sealed. The Talvarian with internal damage got an emergency injection of trauma stabilizers that probably was not rated for his species, but would have to do. Meanwhile, Nova started cutting. She identified a weak point in the collapsed tunnel, a section where the debris was less compacted, more fractured. She began methodically cutting through it, creating a path. The trapped miners watched in disbelief. "She is cutting through solid rock with a torch designed for metal," one of them said. "Yep," Rhea replied, adjusting a splint. "It will take a while, but it will work. Humans are patient when we need to be." "How long have you done this before?" "Personally? Twice. Once on a colony world when an earthquake buried our outpost. Once on a station when an explosion sealed us in a cargo bay. Both times we cut our way out." Rhea moved to the next patient. "It takes time, but it works. And if it does not work? Then we try something else. Humans are good at Plan B and Plan C through Z." An hour passed. 2. Nova cut steadily, making a tunnel through the debris. Other miners joined in, using whatever they could find: bent pipes, broken tools, their own hands. The human showed them how, demonstrated techniques, encouraged them when they flagged. "See, the trick is to work the weak points," Rhea explained, helping a court miner shift a large rock. "Find the fractures, exploit them. Stone wants to break along certain lines. You just have to find them." "How do you know this?" the court asked. "Grew up near mountains, learned rock climbing young, fell into a lot of crevasses, had to climb out of a lot of bad situations." Rhea grinned. "Turns out all that recreational trauma was actually useful training." 3 hours in, they broke through. Nova's cutting torch finally punched into open space, into another tunnel, one that led to a different section of the mine. "We have a path," Nova shouted. They started moving people through. The injured went first, carried by the able-bodied. It was slow, cramped, painful. The tunnel was barely big enough. People had to crawl, to squeeze, to push themselves through spaces that seemed impossible. But humans led the way, showing them how, demonstrating that if a space existed, you could probably fit through it if you tried hard enough and did not mind some bruises. They were halfway through when the rumbling started. "Oh no," Nova said. "Oh no, what?" Rhea asked. "Seismic activity, the cutting, the movement, we destabilized something. There is going to be another collapse." The rumbling grew louder. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling in sheets. "Move. Everyone move now." Rhea grabbed the nearest miner, shoving him toward the exit. "Go, go, go." They ran, crawled, scrambled. The tunnel behind them began to fail, to crush inward. The sound was deafening, the pressure wave pushing at their backs. Rhea was last in line, making sure everyone got through. She saw the tunnel collapsing, saw the wave of destruction rushing toward her, and she knew she was not going to make it. She jumped anyway. Dove forward, arms outstretched, reaching for the exit. The collapse caught her legs, crushing force pinning her in place. Pain exploded through her body, white-hot and all-consuming. But her hands found the edge, found purchase. She pulled, screaming with effort, dragging herself forward even as tons of rock tried to drag her back. Nova grabbed her arms, pulled. Other miners joined in. Together they hauled Rhea through the gap, pulling her free just as the tunnel completely collapsed behind her. They lay in a heap, breathing hard, covered in dust and blood. "Everyone okay?" Rhea gasped. "Define okay," Nova replied. Rhea looked down at her legs. They were badly crushed, definitely broken, possibly shattered. She could not feel them anymore, which was probably for the best. Medical assessment. "I am going to need some help walking." "Walking?" Nova laughed hysterically. "Captain, your legs are destroyed. You are not walking anywhere." "Fine. Crawling then." Rhea started dragging herself forward. "Come on, we are not done yet." They made it to the surface 20 minutes later. The Talvarian rescue teams rushed forward as they emerged from an auxiliary exit, battered and broken but alive. All 43 trapped miners, all 4 humans, everyone accounted for. Administrator Kick stared at them like they were ghosts. You survived. You cut through 800 meters of unstable rock. You escaped 2 collapses. You saved everyone." "Well, not everyone," Rhea said as medics swarmed around her. "I am pretty sure I did not save my legs. Those are in rough shape." "How are you even conscious? The pain alone." "Oh, it hurts. It really, really hurts." Rhea's voice was tight. "But pain is just information. It tells you something is wrong. I already knew something was wrong, so the pain is kind of redundant, you know." The medics were frantically scanning her legs. One of them, a Valthene physician, looked horrified. "Multiple compound fractures, severe tissue damage, vascular compromise. You should be in shock. You should be unconscious. How are you talking?" "Practice," Rhea said simply. "I have had broken bones before. You get used to it." "Used to it?" The physician's crystalline face reflected pure disbelief. "No one gets used to this level of trauma." "Humans do." Nova limped over, her own injuries minor by comparison. "We get used to a lot of things." The news spread fast, faster than fast. Within hours, the entire consortium knew that humans had performed an impossible rescue, that they had descended into a collapsing mine, cut through solid rock, survived multiple cave-ins, and dragged 43 miners to safety. And that Captain Rhea Castellan had done it with shattered legs, pulling herself through a collapsing tunnel because she refused to leave anyone behind. The medical reports went viral, detailed scans of Rhea's injuries, analyses of how she could function with that level of damage, psychological assessments trying to explain her pain tolerance. The conclusion from the consortium medical community: humans were not just durable, they were functionally unstoppable. Pain that would incapacitate other species, humans worked through. Injuries that would kill other species, humans survived. Situations that would defeat other species, humans simply refused to acknowledge as impossible. The rescue on Thuros 4 became known as the impossible extraction. It was studied in military academies, analyzed in medical journals, discussed in philosophical circles. Because it demonstrated something the Gala had only hinted at. Humans did not just survive. They thrived in conditions that should kill them. They looked at impossible situations and made them possible through sheer bloody-minded determination. 2 weeks later, Rhea sat in her ship's medbay, her legs in regeneration casts, reviewing the flood of messages that had come in. The Drexian rescue team had sent a formal commendation. The Talvarian Mining Guild had offered her a Lifetime Achievement Award. The court warriors wanted to recruit her as a training instructor. The Valthene Science Council wanted to study her pain tolerance, again. But the most interesting message came from Empress Azara. It was short, direct, very her. You continue to surprise us, Captain. Not just surviving, but teaching others to survive. The Consortium is lucky to have your species, and perhaps a little afraid of what you will do next. Well done. Rhea smiled, setting the message aside. Her legs throbbed despite the painkillers. The regeneration process was going to take months. She would be grounded, stuck in recovery, unable to work. She hated it already. Nova appeared in the doorway. Captain, you have another visitor. Crown Prince Veyron is requesting permission to come aboard. Veyron? Rhea raised an eyebrow. What does he want? He says it is official Consortium business. Fine, send him in. The Crown Prince entered looking significantly less polished than at the gala. His robes were simpler, his jewelry minimal. He looked, for lack of a better word, humbled. Captain Castellan, he said formally, I came to offer the gratitude of the Kelthari Empire. 3 of the miners you saved were Kelthari citizens. You risked your life, sacrificed your mobility, to save them. We are in your debt. Regay shrugged, just doing what needed doing. Anyone would have. No. Veyron's voice was firm. Not anyone. I certainly would not have. I do not think any Kelthari would have descended into that mine. We would have waited for proper equipment, for safer conditions. We would have followed protocol. He paused. Those miners would have died. Maybe, maybe not. They would have died, Veyron repeated, because we Kelthari value perfection. We value safety. We value our own preservation above almost all else. But humans, he shook his head. Humans value something else, something we had forgotten. What is that? Each other. Veyron met her eyes. You went into that mine not because it was safe, not because it was logical. You went because people needed help, and you pulled 43 strangers out of certain death at tremendous cost to yourself, because that is what humans do. It is what anyone should do. But it is not what anyone does, it is what humans do. Veyron straightened. I mocked you at the gala. I mocked your scars, your species, your worth. I was wrong, profoundly wrong, and I am here to formally apologize. Not because politics demands it, but because you have earned something we Kelthari rarely give, respect. Rhea studied him for a long moment. The apology seemed genuine. The respect seemed real. People could change, apparently. Even arrogant alien princes. Apology accepted, she said finally. And for what it is worth, I do not think you all are as soft as you believe. Anyone who has survived 3,000 years of galactic politics has to have some spine. Veyron almost smiled. Perhaps. But I suspect our spines are made of different materials than yours. Ours bend, yours refuse to break. After he left, Rhea sat alone in the medbay, thinking. The galaxy was changing. The Consortium's view of humanity had shifted from mockery to fear to respect to something else, something harder to define. Humans were not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced, but they had something else, a refusal to quit, a determination to help, a willingness to sacrifice themselves for others, even strangers, even aliens they had just met. It was not logical, it was not safe, it was not even particularly smart, but it was human. And the galaxy was learning that humans were not just survivors, they were the ones who helped others survive too. They were the ones who ran into danger while everyone else ran away. They were the ones who looked at impossible odds and said, "Hold my beer." Rhea's datapad chimed. Another message, this one from Consortium High Command. Captain Castellan, in recognition of your actions on Thuros 4, the Consortium Council has awarded you the Star of Valor, our highest civilian honor. Additionally, we would like to discuss the formation of a new Consortium rescue division, utilizing human personnel and methods. Your species has shown us that survival is not just about avoiding danger, but about facing it when others need you. We want to learn from that. Please contact us at your earliest convenience." Rhea laughed. They wanted to learn from humans. They wanted to teach the galaxy how to be as recklessly heroic as a species that climbed down collapsing mine shafts for fun. This was going to be interesting. She sent a quick reply. "Happy to discuss. Fair warning though, our methods might seem insane to everyone else. We are kind of famous for that now." The response came back almost immediately. "We are aware. We are also aware that insane and effective are not mutually exclusive. Humanity has proven that repeatedly. We look forward to learning from your particular brand of insanity." Rhea set the pad aside and looked out the viewport at the stars. The Consortium thought they had seen what humans could do. They thought the Gala revelations, the Thuros 4 rescue, the accumulated evidence of human durability was the full picture. They still had no idea. They had not seen humans in actual combat. They had not seen what happened when you genuinely threatened human friends or family. They had not seen human ingenuity applied to warfare instead of survival. They had not seen humans get angry. And Rhea was perfectly happy keeping it that way. Better to be known as the helpful survivors, the friendly rescuers, the species that saved people from impossible situations. Better than the alternative. Better than showing the galaxy what humans became when helping others meant hurting their enemies. Some revelations could wait. For now, humanity was the Consortium's favorite survivor story. The species that refused to die, that refused to give up, that refused to let others give up either. It was a good reputation to have. Rhea closed her eyes, letting the painkillers finally pull her towards sleep. Her legs throbbed, her body ached. She would be in recovery for months. But 43 miners were alive. 43 families were whole. 43 beings owed their lives to a human who saw an impossible situation and decided to make it possible. Worth it. Absolutely worth it. As she drifted off, her last thought was simple. The galaxy still had no idea what humans were capable of, and that was probably for the best. For now.